Each of them had wondered if divorce was the answer. And they hadn't just thought of it, they pondered it and thought, is this the way out of this kind of lackluster, boring, and disconnected relationship with so much resentment and sadness and loneliness in the relationship? And they wanted to get ahead of it, empty nest they meant, because they knew that in 4 years they'd be left in their house alone together. Hi there, and welcome to Talk Love with Carol, episode 40. Today, I'm going to tell you a story about a couple, and it's a true story about an empty nest couple who went from nearly getting a divorce to creating the relationship that they wanted. And I'm telling you about this couple because I want you to see what empty nest life can be when you approach it with a plan in mind and the intention to create a relationship that you love. And if you have a proven process, guidance, and a mentor to encourage and support you in that journey. So this is a pretty amazing story. And it starts out with Emma and Brandon, by the way, not their real names, contacting me for a one-on-one, actually a one-on-two work on their relationship. They'd been married when they were pretty young, just right out of college, and had 3 kids, the youngest of which was starting high school in the following September. And they realized that their life was in shambles, and that's their word for it. They'd grown apart and were disconnected emotionally and physically. They didn't really spend time together except at the kids' activities. Everything was about the kids' activities. And Emma's aging mother and Brandon's also aging parents who lived far away, that was part of their lives. Any vacations that they were visiting Brandon's parents in the Midwest with the kids. So they didn't have alone time. Emma and Brandon told me that when they look at each other, they don't really know who the other person is anymore. And that really made them, in a way, dread empty nest. They didn't know what their partner was thinking about anymore, what they were interested in now that it's been 20 years since they were just a couple without kids. And they didn't even know what the other person thought about the marriage. They've been arguing about so many things recently, but they realized that had just been kind of increasing over time, creeping up on them, the arguing. And there was a growing number of topics which they just avoided talking to at all because they were afraid that they'd have a big argument. And that's, in a way, the definition of disconnected, when you don't even feel like you can talk about things with one another. So each of them had wondered if divorce was the answer. And they hadn't just thought of it, they pondered it and thought, is this the way out of this kind of lackluster, boring, and disconnected relationship with so much resentment and sadness and loneliness in the relationship? They said they'd kind of become like roommates rather than a married couple. Does any of this resonate with you? It really did with me when I listened to it back certainly longer time ago than them. My kids are in their 30s now. But they were committed to each other, even though the relationship was in shambles, as they said. In that state, they still were committed to each other and wanted to make the changes in the way they were being with each other together. But they really didn't know how. They tried reading books about it, looking at podcasts, and they just hadn't found anything that worked for them, that they could work. And they wanted to get ahead of it, empty nest they meant, because they knew that in 4 years they'd be left in their house alone together. and their idea of going through the next 30 or 40 years. Think about that, because that's a long time. When you're in your mid to late 40s or even early 50s, look how much time there is left. It's it's a massive amount of time. It's kind of like how long you've already been together. You've still got that much going. So clearly, that was a long time. They didn't want to have this, the way their marriage was working right now. They didn't want to move forward with that. They didn't want that, but they wanted to move forward together. Now, their youngest child was 15, and they knew from already having their two older kids go through this, they know that when a child gets their driver's license, which their son was going to get in a year probably, that's really the beginning of empty nest. Let's face it, that's a different phase. When your child gets a driver's license, they kind of drive away. Now, obviously, they come back, but it's the beginning of them driving away and not coming back, or not coming back for lots of long times, right? So emptiness awareness can hit us suddenly, but it really develops gradually when you think about it. And especially what I'm talking about with empty nest, and that's when you have empty nest, but you also look at your relationship and you think, yikes, what have we made happen? What have we let happen? Let's call it that way. As our lives have got, as their life and as, my life when, when my kids were that age, there's just so much stuff to do. There's careers, there's sporting events, there's dealing with the kids' dramas, whatever's going on, aging parents, trying to keep up with friends, just even a little bit, which often goes by the wayside. But here you've got with you your main friend, your friend for life, hopefully, right there next to you, and that kind of gets lost. So let's talk about how Emma and Brandon made their transformation, because it really was a transformation, and it still is. That still is. So I started with them in creating, or asking them to create a vision, each of them for their own lives, and then their shared vision, because it's probably more important at empty nest than it is in other times, because your relationship truly is changing, like it or not. It's when that last child drives away, or you drive them away and drop them off wherever they're going, it's breathtakingly different when you get home again. It's quiet. All the teens aren't around, making a hot mess, but having so much fun. And it's the two of you. So we always want to start with a vision. What do you want your relationship to be like going forward? Now, that sounds like an easy thing just to start writing, and there it is. But it takes a while, because you have to really think about it. And when you think of all the things that you are used to doing as parents that you no longer have to do, you no longer can do, even if you wish you could. So you need a vision. What are some of the components of that? And what is that like? Okay, so that's the start. And they did that. And they spent some time, and they came up with a really wonderful vision, actually, that really gave each of them the time to flourish, so they can pursue the things that they've thought of when they were parenting, and so they can pursue that. And yet, out of the things that they want to do comes the ability to look at what do we want our relationship to be like, and it's going to be radically different. What are some of the what do we want to do that we haven't been able to do? That's the beginning of really just embodying emptiness. Like, wait, is this terrible, or are there possibilities? Okay, so that's vision. And then we looked at intentions, and that's how do you imagine that yourself on your best day, that you'd really like to be as a partner in this relationship. And I gave them a whole lot of categories to look at, but that's one that's a personal thing, because the work when you work with me on anything about relationships, you work partly on yourself and what's going on in your own head, and then partly what goes on between you. That's what's so different and so important, because it's not just all relationship focused. It's how do I grow myself? How do I change myself? What do I need to do so that I'm a great partner? And with two great partners, it's much easier to have a great relationship. So you grow yourself and you grow your relationship in the same time. Okay, then we looked at the mindsets and how do we need to think about things now that we're an empty nest? What are the mindsets that no longer serve us, or no longer true even? Like, oh, I have to get up and make everybody breakfast. Do you? You know, I mean, I suppose if you like to eat breakfast with your spouse, then sure, or somebody has to get up and do it. Um, but there's that. Nobody has to go off to school unless one of your personal things you want to do in empty nest is go back to school. Some people decide that anyway. So you look at your beliefs, your habits, habits of thinking, all of that really deeply. And then communication, any kind of communication issues that they are just kind of, they really had a habit of not listening to each other very well, or they weren't listening for understanding. They were listening to argue. They didn't know they were doing that, and they didn't mean to do it really, but it's kind of what a lot of people do. It's a lot of us do that at times. So anyway, so we went over that, and then a lot on resolving conflicts. But I really, I said that because a lot of people relate to that. What I think of it is being able to talk about important, really high stakes, high emotion topics in a way that's respectful, compassionate, and direct, so you get things done. It's just the point of it is to understand each other's point of view better, and then evolve from there with your answer. So that's that was for those two, Emma and Brandon. There was some time spent on that because they had different habits of communication that weren't serving them at all. It was creating that avoidance of big topics, pardon me, and then also creating the arguing, because they were just arguing instead of really listening to one another. So then we worked on, and really interwoven throughout, we worked on different ways of connecting, intentionally connecting. So remember, they still had their high school freshmen at home, so they were getting ahead of it, right? They were really figuring this out now. So they were going to learn different ways of connecting when there's still a child at home and when there isn't, and but it's really emotional connection, and of course it's physical connection too, and that for them had really dropped off a lot, and it seems in their case, and in many people's cases, it was in part related to the arguing, to the resentment, and to just feeling distant, so that their physical relationship just didn't naturally flow from that. So we worked really hard on all those things, and different ways of connecting. And then the commitment that they created about having fun. Let's have fun while our son is still home, because he doesn't need a babysitter or any of that stuff. So let's have fun. Let's have dates. Let's do things that we know we like to do. Let's do a new thing. A lot of that is just adding adventure and newness to the relationship, because they've been together since they were 22. Well, that's when they got married. So they probably, I think, if I remember correctly, they knew each other for 3 years before that. So now, since they were 19. So you want to inject difference and different fun, different things to do when you're, when it's just the two of you and not out with a group of friends, but going out with a group of friends too, of course. So the outcome of all of this is that they had a blueprint for the next chapter, the chapter after the children are out of the nest. Empty nest sounds bad. It is empty nest, but it's empty nest while at the same time loving that your kids are successful, that they're doing what they want to do, or they're floundering around, but you know they're going to do well. And so there's joy and pride in it, like, oh, it's just so happy for them and proud of them. And then there's us. Okay. So they ended up with a blueprint for the next chapter, the next level of their relationship. And that chapter was for 30 or 40 years. Now, are they going to have to revise that at some point? Yes, the predictable ones are when their child gets married. Second, when their child has their a baby or babies. Being a grandparent and being the in-law is a whole other thing, but that's for another day. This next chapter is what their blueprint was for. Now, the way I've told the story sounds like the highlights, and it was. There were multiple snags along the way that could have permanently set them back or even led them to divorce. But they had engaged a mentor, a coach, and an advisor, me, and together we worked around and worked through any pitfalls and all the pitfalls that came. Then that's how they created that blueprint for the life that they want. Now, I want to tell you what else happened. And I just thought this was just the cherry on top. They decided that they were so happy and so recommitted that they went to France, to the small town where they had gotten married, and they renewed their vows. And this sounds fake, but it is the honest truth. They got the same priest, who was now really old, but the same priest to marry them, to remarry them or redo their vows that married him. It's really true. Sometimes when I tell that story, I don't even put that in there because it sounds like, oh yeah, right. 100%. I was shocked. That guy was still around. This was like, what was it? 23 years later, something like that, I think. Yeah, still there. So, promise it's true. When you reflect on that story, I want you to do it with this idea. We could do that too. I'm not really talking about France. I'm talking about the other parts. We could do that too. We could take our relationship that really looks like it's a hot mess and fix it. Work it with dedication, time, and ideally with a helper, because it's really hard when you don't. And with a helper that knows what they're doing, with a guide and mentor and advisor that is experienced like I am. I forgot to introduce myself today. Anyway, I am Dr. Carol Henry. You may have figured that out. And I've worked for 35 years with couples and was a research therapist in a couples therapy study, a federally funded one, and have supervised other psychologists on how to do couples work. So I've developed a proven process, which proven by I've worked with more than 1,000 couples at this point. And in no way am I saying they all got better. I mean, sometimes no, but very high percentage of people made really remarkable changes in the way they interact, the way they love each other, and have been way better for it and happy. So there's a proven process. There's a experienced and proven to be effective psychologist / coach. And that's what you need. You need somebody who knows what they're doing. You need that drive within you that you're committed, even though you really don't like how your relationship is right now, but you're committed to doing something about it and growing yourself. So don't sabotage yourselves by thinking, well, it was them, but we could never do that. You could. You really could. Don't let yourself think it could never happen with us. It won't happen. You will work it if you choose to. You work it and you make it happen. The two of you make it happen with your coach, mentor, psychologist, whatever, at your side, link in arms. Okay. So if you do the work with the right process and the right mentor and the right attitude and work ethic, you'll get it. You can get it done. So you can turn the dread of empty nest into a time in your life that you can live your best life. So if that appeals to you, if that idea, if you even want to sort of talk around about that idea, I offer no charge, no pressure, discovery call. Discover your possibilities. See if it would work for you. See what you think you could do. If you want to work with me, then we'll talk about that, after we've talked about your relationship. And if not, I'll think of other resources that maybe would work. So there's going to be a link in the comments about how to schedule a call with me. And I would love to talk to you if you want to. So that's all for today. And I hope you'll think about it and think about where are your kids? Or maybe they've already left and you have this struggling relationship that's your empty nest. Or maybe your kids are in middle school. It's not too early to start. Oh my goodness, not at all. Emma and Brandon had, let's see, how old would he be? 14, I think, a 14-year-old. If they'd start when this last child was 11 and the other kids were about to leave instead of left already, they would have had a few more years of being happier. So anyway, it's not too early to start. I mean, unless you have a baby, it is too early to start. But if you do have a baby, make sure that you don't let that baby make you completely forget about nurturing each other. Okay, anyway, that's it. And hope you learned something today. And I will see you, I hope, next week. Bye now.